What's up, everybody? Thralls of Metal here. I'm Jammin John.
Necrotic, Nick.
And we have yet another album review for you. Now, we were looking around trying to find something. We had a couple of bigger releases this week, and so we were trying to figure out what we were going to do for the other two, and we decided to dig a little bit into the underground. So we are going to go over the debut EP from Emasculator, the Disfigured and the Divine. This comes out on the 25th of September on New Standard Elite. This band formed in 2021 in the Czech Republic and the US, although we looked around and couldn't find anybody in the Czech Republic.
There was one guest vocalist that was from the Czech Republic, but everyone else definitely from the U.S.
Yep. Features current and former members of Abnormality, Unfathomable Ruination, Oak Ash and Thorn, and Puntailor. I said it really quickly, YouTube. Eat my shit.
Yeah, I put the logo up there anyway. Whatever.
We reviewed Oak Ash and Thorn here on the channel a couple years ago. Our buddy Nate was in that band. And we met Morgana at Denver Death Fest, and we also ran into her at Maryland Death Fest too. And this band is just flat out brutal death metal. Insane riffing, pretty technical, punchy, fast, in your face, unrelenting, doesn't really give up.
Right away, like the opening track, Ecstasy in Disseverment of Self, and quotes there. Honestly, like, all right, when I think of like brutal death metal, generally I think of like a lot more modern acts here lately. This actually sounds more like 90s death metal, but like on the brutal side. Like, There's a lot of suffocation on here, and I am always down for suffocation. But right away, the thing that I noticed was it didn't kind of open up with like just the straightforward, like chunkified riffs. Like, you get some really sinister tremolo riffs. Like, there's stuff in here that reminds me a lot of Morbid Angel. Probably like a little bit of like Hate Eternal, but at the same time, like, you get, you know, kind of like old school brutal death metal, like, again, Suffocation, Broken Hope, I would say, and even some more technical flair like Cryptopsy.
Yeah, it's a lot darker than I thought it would be. Those tremolos really add a lot to the atmosphere to just make it sound kind of more mean. I was expecting brutal death metal, a bunch of slams and whatnot, and while you get some of those in there, they do play around with tremolos quite a bit. Songs like Thesmophoric Rites or Eradication of the Azuras, or even the last track, Supreme Void of Acephalous Being, all play around with dark tremolos.
Yeah, and admittedly, like, some of these words we're going to struggle to pronounce. Like, there's some serious vocab words on here. When I initially saw Eradication of the Asuras, or Asura, I'm not really sure how to say that. I thought it said Eradication of the Anus, but I remembered we're not going over Puntailor. No, this is just very riff-driven, super aggressive. I love the drum work on here. It reminds me a lot of Mike Smith. Like, there's a lot of those full extension blast beats. Heavy on the grooves too. Not a lot of like traditional slam breakdowns, which generally when I see brutal death metal, I expect, you know, slam breakdowns, because I mean, they're pretty much joined at the hip. But there's a lot of like good groovy pockets, and man, like the guitar work in here, especially when they get down to those grooves, and especially that like kind of angular, kind of like triplet driven riffing. A lot of Terrence Hobbs sort of like flashes that, I mean, that's always going to get me. Thesmorphic Rites and Supreme Void of Acephalous Being have flat out just like catchy riffs. And there's a lot of cool riff changes in there. Like, they'll switch from like triplet riffs to like, you know, a flat out like cool tremolo harmony, which the tremolo harmonies are, again, like super sinister. They make it sound more dark and less brutal, I guess, because generally, you know, brutal death metal is kind of like go for the throat and then kind of drag you over across the pavement by your face and then run you over. Like, you know, that's brutal death metal. They just want to like destroy you. So I like a little bit of like nuance in there, and atmosphere, you know, where there is like very little in the way of atmosphere on this EP, it is appreciated when they kind of open it up and just, you know, make it sound a little bit more evil.
The songs, for the most part, aren't that long. There's only 7 songs, one of them's an interlude, and for the most part, the other ones are like 2 and 3 minute songs. Age of the Goddess being the longest track at just a little bit over 4 minutes actually has a lot more to do than some of these songs do. There's a lot more dynamic to that, frequent transitions, and a little bit more technical intricacy to the riffs as well.
Yeah, I definitely picked up on the more technical play. Like, that's the stuff that really reminded me of Cryptopsy. And I mean, another band you could bring up is Defeated Sanity, not only because there are some similarities, at least in some sections, but also this was mixed and mastered by Josh Welshman, who's the frontman of Defeated Sanity, which we're eager to go over the new one when that one drops too.
Yes, please.
But yeah, like the more dissonant, more angular riffs that kind of show up on there, and honestly, like towards the end of this EP, like I think the riff work just really opens up a lot. Like, you start hearing different dynamics that really don't show up on the earlier songs, like namely that technical, more dissonant riffing. It's a little bit more prominent. Also, Age of the Goddess in particular probably has like some of the most notable grooves on the entire album, namely because that's the only one that I could really peg that just kind of has like a flat out slam breakdown on that. There's like a big syncopated groove. There's syncopated riffs all over here, but generally they are blasted over, which I don't really have an issue with at all. But you know, with brutal death metal, I kind of expect like a slam riff every now and then, and at least there is like one notable one, and there's some really solid, just flat out breakdowns on that song.
And that's really the only song where I would state there is a full down breakdown. Like, I was expecting this to slow down and just, you know, punch my face in, and it punches my face in, but it's quick. There's not a lot of slowdown moments. In Resplendent Terror does have a bit more by the way of chunkified riffs. It's got a big suffocation vibe to it. There is a batch of slammy riffs, but again, they're blasted over, and like, I don't know, that caught me off guard, because as brutal as this band is, there's not really any pick your buddy up in the pit and slam him into the floor moments.
And this whole EP is just flat out savage from start to finish, almost. The interlude, The Unassailable, is a really interesting piece. It's like more like sitars and like Indian music. There's like a chanted vocal part on there from a guest vocalist whose only credit is this album, so I didn't really write down her name. I probably should have.
Sorry.
It does work in some metal elements, like there are guitars more in the background. There's like some kind of wails in the background too. Like, it's got some cool atmosphere to it, but while I like it, it's so different that it almost doesn't fit the EP. And there are some other issues on here. While I like kind of the gritty, very 90s style production on here, one element kind of bothered me, and it was the bass. Now, generally, I like hearing the bass up a little bit in the mix. Like, so many mixes out there, you just squash the basses.
Yeah, especially in Brutal Death.
Yeah.
Like, the bass player is not often a prominent, like, driving force in brutal music.
Unless you're a mortician.
Well. Well.
But it's kind of a combination of where it sits in the mix and the tone of it. The tone is very fuzzy, and it just kind of has this snarling sound that where it is in the mix, it kind of drowns out some of the riffs occasionally. Like, this would be a bass tone maybe like better like suited for like grindcore. Like, it's just kind of like messy sounding. And the other issue I had in here, and it's also kind of a compliment too, is the fact that some of these songs just end too soon or end abruptly. Now, that's a compliment because I like what I'm hearing. I didn't want them to end too soon. Like, if this was like name a shitty band, I'd be thankful that the song was over.
Right.
And it's especially, I wouldn't say like frustrating, but you know, it kind of took me out of it when I feel like the songs were building like a head of steam, like they were getting like really good, and then they just cut off. Eradication of the Asuras, especially, like, that song is explosive. It shows off more of the technical elements. I was really getting into it, and then it doesn't even feel like it is being like led into the end of the song.
Yeah.
It just kind of stops. I also thought the opening track was a little on the short side, and the ending kind of came very abruptly there. But in Resplendent Terror, that one just has like a sudden fade out. Like, it fades out where you feel like there's going to be more song.
Yep.
Like, there's going to be like another transition after that point, and then we closed out on, I don't know, something that would kind of like signify the end of the song. With those songs in particular, they feel kind of unfinished.
And that song in particular too, in Resplendent Terror, like, that song I thought was particularly brutal, especially in the heaviness of the riffing, and like where it fades out, and it does it so quickly too. That fade out, it's not a gradual fade out like that. It's like boop, done.
Yeah, it's a pretty serious cut.
You're just like, whoa, wait a minute, because I feel with the particular intensity of that song that there was way more to go, and I was just like, well, okay. The other thing about this was that there were no leads. Now, I get that some brutal death metal does it and some doesn't. I feel like the playing on this record, at least the technical intricacy of the riffs and whatnot, kind of would allude to having some leads. Like, I just feel like a couple of these songs called for that, and it wasn't here. I guess that's not a big deal because, again, it's brutal death metal, and I get it, but there are no leads, and that was kind of strange.
Yeah, I mean, they do kind of make up for it with some, like, you know, cool tremolo harmonies every now and then and some other harmonized riffs. But there were a couple moments in here where I feel like there could have been, like, just, like, a short lead. Like, even if it's, like, a series of dive bombs or something, that kind of adds, like, a little bit of, like, extra gristle to these, like, nasty, brutal songs. But overall, I thought this was pretty solid. Like, it definitely feels like it's a work in progress. Most bands are anyway. But, you know, there's still some stuff to kind of hammer out on here. But overall, they have a solid foundation, and it is built on absolutely savage music.
Yes.
So overall, I'm going to give this 3 stars. I think this is a pretty solid EP. I would definitely go back to it. It reminds me a lot of, like, the brutal death metal that I generally prefer. Like, this isn't just a slam and chug and, sewer gurgle fest. It definitely has those elements, but there's a ton of other things going on, too, that I like. And this kind of harks back to, like, 90s death metal in particular. So, you know, I got a lot of Suffocation vibes on here, Cryptopsy, but also, like, some Morbid Angel, too. Yep. I definitely would have liked this more if some of, like, the songs I was really getting into didn't just kind of cut off. Yep. You know, there's nothing wrong with kind of, like, you know, stretching out some of these songs and doing, like, some more, like, you know, lavish transitions, or even, like, kind of a big, stupid breakdown at the end just to kind of, like, fade out on. But yeah, like, some of this felt like it was kind of, like, you know, cut off too soon, and there were definitely some, like, riffs and ideas that might have been left on the table. But overall, I dig it. If you're a big fan of Broken Hope, Vomit the Soul, definitely Suffocation. I'm just going to keep laboring that point. If you just like flat out brutal death metal and you like riffs, check this out.
I agree with Nick on this. It's a 3-star for me as well. It's a solid EP. It's a definite great offering from this band. It is fiercely brutal. The songs are all pretty great, albeit short. I didn't have any complaints about the snare drum. Normally with Brutal Death, they have plunky snare drums, but like the mix of the drums was great. The drum work is spectacular. Sierra did a great job. It is fiercely old school, and I think that's kind of what drives me to this as well. I like the fact that there's a bunch of nasty Morbid Angel tremolos in there, and it's got big Suffocation vibes, and there's a lot more groove to it than there is just blast. I would like to see what they do next with this. I think there's a few wrinkles that need to be ironed out, but overall it's a pretty solid record. Yeah, if you're a fan of, again, Suffocation, I think we're all sold on Suffocation. Morbid Angel, Hate Eternal, Broken Hope, and probably a litany of other bands I don't know because I'm not the world's biggest brutal death metal fan. Definitely check this out. It's a good listen.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are still currently on Patreon. I haven't kind of flipped over to the whole membership thing, but that is probably going to come soon. But for now, we are there, and if you would like to visit our Patreon channel that's not going to be there in a little bit, you can do that because there's a link to it down at thrallsmetal.com, which is down below. There's also one on the channel, too. Again, it's kind of going to be a moot point here soon. But thrallsmetal.com is still where we sell our t-shirts. We have old ones and new ones. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats, too. So if you're looking for that stuff in particular, and a Patreon link that's going to be defunct, click the link down below.
And as always, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal, album reviews, discography rankings, multiple discussion forums, plenty of topical discussions, states of metal, is it not metal, Nick's never-ending collection updates. I think What's John Jamming is finally going to come back here because it's about goddamn time. Anyway, all the things we do here at Thralls of Metal, we do all for you guys because we genuinely appreciate all of our fans, our subscribers. You guys mean the absolute world to us. It's amazing. Thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and it's just been amazing doing this. So one more big thank you because of just how flat out awesome you are, and we will catch you later.